The morning my divorce papers arrived was unseasonably cold for September. I stood in my bathrobe on the porch, clutching the manila envelope like it might burn through my fingers. The delivery man had already disappeared down the street, unaware he'd just handed me both an ending and a beginning. My name is Camille Westwood, and according to my now ex-husband, I was utterly incapable of success without him. "You'll come crawling back within 6 months," Derek had sneered during our last argument, his handsome face twisted with contempt. "You think you can make it on your own? You've never even paid a single bill." I took the envelope inside and placed it on the kitchen counter, the gorgeous marble counter that Derek had reminded me, repeatedly, that I could never have afforded on my teaching salary alone. The kitchen still smelled faintly of the coffee I'd made hours earlier, before the sun had fully risen. Before the world had shifted, yet again. My phone buzzed. Caroline, my younger sister. "Did they come?" she asked without preamble. "Just now," I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. "It's official. I'm divorced. How do you feel?" I glanced around the empty kitchen of my rented townhouse. 3 months ago, I'd been living in a sprawling colonial with cathedral ceilings and a 3-car garage. Now, my entire life fit into a space that Derek would have deemed suitable only for staff quarters. "Liberated," I answered, surprising even myself with the conviction in my voice. "And terrified. The two often go hand in hand," Caroline said wisely. "Are we still on for dinner tonight? We need to celebrate your freedom." "Celebrate?" I laughed. "I'm 35, starting over with basically nothing, and my ex-husband is convinced I'll fail spectacularly without him." "What exactly are we celebrating?" "The fact that you don't have to listen to that pompous ass anymore," she replied promptly. 7 o'clock. That little Italian place on Maple. Where something that makes you feel powerful. After we hung up, I walked to my small home office, really just a converted closet with a desk wedged inside, and opened my laptop. The business plan I'd been working on for weeks stared back at me. Bold letters across the top read West Educational Consulting. Derek's words echoed in my mind. "An educational consultant? That's cute, Camille. Really cute. Let me know how that works out when you're drowning in debt and begging me to take you back." I pushed his voice away and focused on the numbers in front of me. 10 years as a high school English teacher, 5 years as department head, 3 years on the district curriculum committee. I had skills. I had experience. I had contacts. What I didn't have was confidence. And I was desperately running out of savings. My phone buzzed again with a text from Simon Chen, my former colleague. "Heard back from Greenwich Prep. They want a proposal by next week. Is that doable?" I stared at the message, my heart racing. Greenwich Preparatory Academy was one of the most prestigious private schools in the state. Their curriculum hadn't been updated in nearly a decade, and their standardized test scores were slipping. This could be my first major client. "Absolutely," I texted back, even as panic fluttered in my chest. "I'll have something to them by Tuesday." I glanced at the calendar. 5 days to create a comprehensive curriculum overhaul proposal for a school I'd never even visited. 5 days to prove that I wasn't just a divorced woman playing at being a consultant. 5 days to start proving Derek wrong. With trembling hands, I opened a new document and began to type. The Italian restaurant was warm and inviting, the scent of garlic and basil enveloping me as I stepped inside. Caroline was already there, her dark hair twisted into an elegant knot, a glass of red wine in front of her. At 32, my sister had already made partner at her law firm, a fact that Derek had often thrown in my face during arguments. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" he'd ask. "She actually does something meaningful with her life." I slid into the booth across from her, grateful that I'd listened and worn my best blazer, the navy one with gold buttons that made me feel like I could conquer the world, or at least fake it convincingly. "You look good," Caroline said, studying my face. "Different." "Different bad or different good?" "Different determined," she replied, pouring me a glass of wine from the bottle she'd already ordered. "I like it. It reminds me of how you used to look before you married Derek." I sipped the rich Merlot, letting the warmth spread through me. "I've been working on a proposal for Greenwich Prep. Simon Chin connected me with them." Caroline's eyebrows shot up. "Greenwich? That's impressive, Cam." "Don't be impressed yet. They haven't hired me." "They will," she said with conviction. "Because you're brilliant, and you've been underestimating yourself for way too long." The waiter appeared to take our order, and as Caroline chatted with him about specials, I felt my phone vibrate in my purse. I pulled it out to see a text from Derek. "Heard about Greenwich. Don't embarrass yourself. Those people can smell desperation." I stared at the message, my hand tightening around the phone. How did he know? Who had told him? "What's wrong?" Caroline asked, noticing my expression. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I handed her my phone wordlessly. Her face darkened as she read the text. What a complete asshole. How does he even know about this? "I have no idea," I admitted. "I've only told you and Simon." "Block him," Caroline advised, handing the phone back. "He's trying to get in your head. Don't let him." "But what if he's right? What if I am in over my head? Greenwich is a big deal, and I've never done anything like this before." Caroline leaned forward, her eyes fierce. "Listen to me, Camille. Derek spent years convincing you that you couldn't succeed without him because he knew the truth, that you were always the smarter one, the one with real talent. He needed you to believe you were dependent on him because he was terrified of what would happen if you realized your potential." "I don't know if that's—" "I'm not finished," she interrupted. "Do you remember when you got that offer to develop the district-wide curriculum refresh 3 years ago? And suddenly Derek needed to move for his amazing new job opportunity that conveniently fell through after you'd already resigned your position?" I stared at her, memories shifting and realigning in my mind. I'd never made the connection before. "He sabotaged you," Caroline said bluntly. "Because he couldn't stand the thought of you outshining him. And now that you're free, he's terrified of what you might accomplish." The waiter returned with our pasta dishes, the rich aroma momentarily distracting me from the revelation unfolding in my mind. Had Derek really been undermining me all those years? Had I been so blind? "Block his number," Caroline repeated. "And then prove him wrong so thoroughly that he'll choke on his own words." I picked up my phone, navigated to Derek's contact information, and pressed block this caller. A small weight lifted from my shoulders. "Now," Caroline said, twirling pasta onto her fork, "tell me about this proposal for Greenwich. What's your angle?" For the next hour, I outlined my ideas, gaining enthusiasm and confidence as Caroline asked intelligent questions and offered insights from her legal perspective. By the time we finished our tiramisu, I had pages of notes and a renewed sense of purpose. As we stood outside the restaurant saying goodbye, Caroline hugged me tightly. "You've got this, Cam. And if you ever doubt yourself, remember one thing, you survived being married to Derek Westwood for 12 years. After that, running your own business will be a cakewalk." I laughed, but as I drove home through the quiet streets, her words echoed in my mind. I had survived. And more than that, I had escaped. Now it was time to thrive. The proposal for Greenwich Prep consumed my every waking moment for the next 5 days. I researched their current curriculum, analyzed their test score trends, and interviewed 2 former teachers who had recently left the school. The picture that emerged was clear: Greenwich was clinging to tradition at the expense of innovation, and their students were suffering for it. By Tuesday morning, I had a comprehensive 70-page proposal that outlined a revolutionary approach to integrating traditional educational values with modern teaching methods. My hands shook as I attached the document to an email addressed to Headmaster Richard Thornhill. "Dear Mr. Thornhill," I wrote, "please find attached my proposal for revitalizing the Greenwich Preparatory Academy curriculum. I believe it addresses the core issues we discussed while honoring the rich traditions that make Greenwich exceptional. I look forward to discussing it with you at your convenience." I read the message 3 times, checked the attachment twice, and then, before I could lose my nerve, pressed send. An hour later, as I was making a second cup of coffee to combat my nervous energy, my phone rang with an unknown number. "Camille Westwood speaking," I answered, trying to sound calm and professional. "Ms. Westwood, this is Richard Thornhill from Greenwich Preparatory Academy." My heart jumped into my throat. "Mr. Thornhill, thank you for calling. I just submitted my proposal." "Yes, that's why I'm calling," he interrupted. "I've only had time to scan it, but I'm intrigued by your approach. I'd like to discuss it in person. Are you available to come in tomorrow morning?" I gripped the kitchen counter for support. "Yes, absolutely. What time works for you?" 9 o'clock. "My assistant will email you the details." "I'll be there," I promised. "Thank you for this opportunity, Mr. Thornhill." After we hung up, I stood frozen in my kitchen, barely daring to breathe. He had called personally. Within an hour of receiving my proposal. This was real. I was about to reach for my phone to call Caroline when it buzzed with a text message from a number I didn't recognize. "Thornhill only meets with vendors as a courtesy. Don't get your hopes up." My blood ran cold. There was only one person who could have sent this. Derek must have gotten a new number after I blocked him. Another text followed. "Greenwich would never hire someone like you. You're embarrassing yourself." I deleted the messages and blocked the new number, but the damage was done. The seed of doubt had been planted. What if Thornhill was just being polite? What if my proposal was actually laughably inadequate? I sank into a kitchen chair, my momentary exhilaration evaporating. How had Derek even known about the meeting? Did he have contacts at Greenwich? Was he actively trying to sabotage me? My phone rang again, and I answered without checking the number, my voice sharp with anxiety. "Hello? Camille? It's Simon. I just got a call from Thornhill. He's impressed with your proposal. Really impressed." Relief flooded through me. Thank God. He asked for a meeting tomorrow, but then I got these texts suggesting he was just being polite, and I started to doubt. Wait, what texts? I hesitated, embarrassed to admit that Derek was still getting to me. Nothing important. Just some negativity I need to ignore. "Is this Derek's doing?" Simon asked, his voice hardening. "Because if he's interfering." "I can handle Derek," I said, more confidently than I felt. "Tell me more about what Thornhill said." Simon seemed reluctant to change the subject but respected my redirect. "He said your approach to balancing traditional values with progressive methods was exactly what he's been looking for." The board has been pressuring him to improve their rankings without sacrificing their Greenwich identity. So this is a real opportunity? Very real, Simon confirmed. And potentially lucrative. Greenwich isn't known for penny pinching when it comes to quality. After we hung up, I opened my laptop and revisited my proposal, reading it with fresh eyes. It was good work. Innovative but respectful of tradition. Data-driven but with a human touch. It was exactly the kind of work I'd wanted to do for years but had never been given the chance to pursue. As I prepared for the meeting the next day, selecting my most professional outfit and rehearsing my talking points, I realized something important. Whether Greenwich hired me or not, I had already proven to myself that I could create something of value on my own. That was a victory Derek could never take away from me. The following morning, I arrived at Greenwich Preparatory Academy 20 minutes early, giving myself time to absorb the atmosphere. The campus was impressive, with ivy-covered brick buildings and manicured lawns that spoke of tradition and privilege. Students in crisp uniforms moved between classes, their voices a gentle hum in the autumn air. Inside the administration building, the walls were lined with photographs of graduating classes dating back to the school's founding in 1891. So much history. So much resistance to change. Ms. Westwood? A young woman approached, clipboard in hand. Headmaster Thornhill is ready for you. Please follow me. She led me to an ornate office where Richard Thornhill waited, a tall, distinguished man with silver hair and keen eyes. To my surprise, he wasn't alone. 4 other people sat around a conference table, watching me with expressions ranging from curiosity to skepticism. Ms. Westwood, thank you for coming, Thornhill said, shaking my hand. Let me introduce our academic committee. This is Dr. Eleanor Hughes, our Dean of Studies, Mr. James Bradford, our board chairman, Ms. Victoria Winters, our Parent Association president, and, he paused, something flickering in his eyes, Mr. Alexander Reed, our newest board member. Alexander Reed stood to shake my hand, his grip firm and confident. It's a pleasure, Ms. Westwood. I've heard a great deal about you. Something in his tone made me pause. Have we met before, Mr. Reed? Not directly, he replied with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. But we have a mutual acquaintance in Derek Westwood. I believe he's your ex-husband? The room seemed to tilt slightly. Of course. Alexander Reed. Derek had mentioned him several times, a wealthy investor who had recently backed one of Derek's development projects. A man Derek was desperate to impress. Yes, I said, keeping my voice steady. Though we're no longer connected. Reed's smile widened. Fascinating. When Derek mentioned his ex-wife was pitching services to Greenwich, I was intrigued enough to attend this meeting. I hope you don't mind. Before I could respond, Thornhill cleared his throat. Shall we begin? Ms. Westwood, we've all read your proposal, and I must say, it's generated quite a discussion among our committee. For the next hour, I presented my ideas, addressing questions and concerns with a confidence that surprised even me. Throughout it all, Alexander Reed watched me with an unreadable expression, occasionally making notes but offering neither questions nor comments. When the formal presentation ended, the committee members seemed impressed, all except Reed, who remained inscrutable. Thank you, Ms. Westwood, Thornhill said warmly. This is precisely the fresh perspective we've been seeking. The committee will need to deliberate, of course, but I believe we can move forward quickly. As the meeting concluded and people began to gather their materials, Reed approached me. Impressive presentation, he said, his voice low enough that only I could hear. Though I wonder if someone with such limited business experience is really the right fit for Greenwich. My spine stiffened. I have 15 years of educational experience, Mr. Reed. May I ask what your background in education is? His eyes narrowed slightly. My expertise is in recognizing viable investments, Ms. Westwood. And I'm not convinced that you represent a good return for Greenwich. Then it's fortunate that the decision isn't solely yours to make, I replied, maintaining eye contact despite the flutter of anxiety in my chest. Reed chuckled, the sound devoid of humor. You'd be surprised at the influence I have here. Derek warned me you might be overconfident. Before I could respond, Thornhill joined us, his presence diffusing the tension. Alexander, I see you've been getting acquainted with Ms. Westwood. What did you think of her proposal? Reed's demeanor shifted instantly, his smile returning. Thought-provoking, Richard. I've made some notes I'd like to discuss during our deliberation. As I left the campus, my initial optimism had dimmed considerably. Alexander Reed's presence on the committee couldn't be coincidental. Had Derek deliberately sent him to sabotage my chances? And if so, how far would Reed go to please his new business partner? My phone buzzed as I reached my car. A text from an unknown number, Derek with yet another new phone. Heard your meeting went well. Too bad about that last-minute addition to the committee. Better luck next time. I deleted the message without responding, but my hands shook with a combination of anger and fear. This wasn't just about Derek's ego anymore. He was actively trying to destroy my chances of success. By the time I arrived home, I'd formulated a plan. If Derek wanted to play dirty, I needed to be prepared. I called the one person who understood both business and underhanded tactics better than anyone I knew. Dad? It's Camille. I need your advice. Morton Ashford answered his phone on the second ring. Dad was in rare form today, his voice brimming with the same barely contained energy that had built his real estate empire from nothing. Camille. Perfect timing. I was just thinking about you. You were? I asked, surprised. My father was not known for sentimentality. Of course. I heard about your presentation at Greenwich. Word travels fast in certain circles. I nearly dropped the phone. How could you possibly? Richard Thornhill and I are in the same cigar club. He mentioned he'd met with an educational consultant named Westwood. Didn't take much to connect the dots. Dad paused. He was impressed, by the way. Said your proposal was revolutionary. Hope flickered back to life. Did he mention anything about Alexander Reed? Dad's voice sharpened. Reed was there? Interesting. He's not usually involved in academic decisions. He's a business partner of Derek's, I explained. And he made it pretty clear he was there to tank my chances. Ah, Dad said, understanding immediately. Derek's still trying to control you, even after the divorce. Typical. I sank onto my couch, suddenly exhausted. Dad, what am I going to do? This was my big opportunity, and Derek is ruining it because he can't stand the thought of me succeeding without him. First of all, Dad said firmly, you're not going to panic. Reed has influence, but he's just one voice on that committee. And Thornhill doesn't strike me as a man easily swayed by politics. But. Second, he continued, ignoring my interruption, you're going to send Thornhill a detailed follow-up addressing any concerns that were raised during the meeting. Be confident, be thorough, and make it impossible for them to choose anyone else. I sat up straighter. Okay. I can do that. And third, Dad's voice took on the tone that had intimidated countless business rivals. You're going to stop letting Derek get in your head. He's doing this because he's scared, Camille. He knows what you're capable of, and it terrifies him. It was almost exactly what Caroline had said, and hearing it from my father, a man who rarely offered praise or encouragement, made me believe it might actually be true. Thanks, Dad, I said softly. I need to hear that. One more thing, he added. I'm having dinner with the Greenwich board chairman next week. Would you like me to coincidentally mention how Harvard's education department has been inquiring about your consulting services? Dad. That would be lying. It's called strategic negotiation, Camille. Something your ex-husband understands all too well. I thought about Derek's underhanded tactics, about Alexander Reed's smug certainty, about 12 years of being told I wasn't good enough. Do it, I said decisively. But make it Yale instead of Harvard. More Greenwich alumni there. Dad's deep laugh rumbled through the phone. That's my girl. Now go write that follow-up letter and show them what a Westwood, an Ashford Westwood, can really do. After we hung up, I opened my laptop with renewed determination. Dad was right. I couldn't let Derek's desperate attempts to undermine me succeed. I had worked too hard, prepared too thoroughly, to let his insecurity derail my future. I spent the next 3 hours crafting a detailed follow-up letter to Thornhill, addressing potential concerns and expanding on key aspects of my proposal. When I finally sent it, my confidence had returned in full force. Whatever influence Alexander Reed thought he had, whatever whispers Derek was spreading, I had one advantage they could never take away. I was genuinely passionate about education and had the expertise to back it up. No amount of business connections could fake that kind of authenticity. Now I just had to hope that the Greenwich Committee would see it too. 3 days passed with no word from Greenwich. I busied myself with research for potential new clients, but anxiety gnawed at me constantly. Had Reed's influence been enough to sway the committee against me? Was my fledgling business already doomed? On the 4th day, just as I was settling in for another morning of nervous waiting, my phone rang. Thornhill's number. Ms. Westwood, he began without preamble, the committee has reached a decision. We'd like to offer you a 6-month contract to implement the curriculum changes outlined in your proposal. Relief and joy flooded through me, so intense that for a moment I couldn't speak. Ms. Westwood? Are you still there? Yes, I managed finally. Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Mr. Thornhill. This means a great deal to me. There's one condition, he continued. We'd like you to work on site 3 days a week, with the other 2 days flexible for preparation and administrative tasks. Is that feasible for you? Absolutely, I agreed immediately. When would you like me to start? Next Monday, if that works for you. And Ms. Westwood? Yes. Your follow-up letter was quite persuasive. Particularly the points addressing the integration of traditional methodologies with technological innovations. The entire committee was impressed. My heart skipped. The entire committee? Including Mr. Reed? Thornhill paused. Mr. Reed was outvoted. But that's neither here nor there. The contract details will be emailed to you today. We look forward to working with you. After we hung up, I sat in stunned silence for several minutes. I had done it. Despite Derek's interference, despite Reed's opposition, I had secured my first major client. I called Caroline first, her excited squeals making me hold the phone away from my ear. I knew it, she crowed. I knew they'd recognize your brilliance. It hasn't been formally announced yet, I cautioned. But yes, they're sending the contract today. We need to celebrate, Caroline insisted. Dinner at Morton's, tomorrow night. I'm buying. After promising to meet her, I called Dad, who greeted the news with his typical understated approval. Well done, he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. Though I'm not surprised. Thornhill would have been a fool to pass you up. Did you end up having dinner with the board chairman? I asked, curious about whether Dad's strategic negotiation had been necessary. I did, but it turns out you didn't need my help after all. Bradford was already sold on your proposal before I could even mention Yale. Pride surged through me. I had done this on my own merit. That follow-up letter you sent was the clincher, apparently, Dad continued. Bradford said it addressed every concern before they could even voice it. Very impressive, Camille. Coming from my father, that was high praise indeed. What about Reed? I asked. Did Bradford mention him? Dad chuckled. Apparently Reed made quite a scene during the final vote. Insisted that hiring you would be a mistake. Bradford found it curious that Reed was so invested in a curriculum decision, especially since he's only been on the board for a month. Did you tell Bradford about Reed's connection to Derek? I might have mentioned it, Dad said innocently. Bradford was interested to learn about that particular conflict of interest. I should have been appalled at the political maneuvering, but all I felt was satisfaction. Derek had tried to use his connections to sabotage me, and it had backfired spectacularly. Dad, I hate to cut this short, but I need to call Simon and thank him for the introduction. And then I need to review the contract when it arrives. Of course. One more thing, Camille. Yes? I'm proud of you. The words, so rarely spoken by my father, brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Thanks, Dad. That means a lot. After we hung up, I allowed myself just a moment to savor the victory. Then I reached for my phone again, ready to share the news with Simon. Before I could dial, a text message appeared on my screen. Derek, from yet another new number. Congratulations on Greenwich. Enjoy it while it lasts. We both know you'll crash and burn without me. For the first time, his words didn't fill me with doubt. Instead, I felt something close to pity. Derek was still clinging to the narrative he'd constructed, that I was incapable, that I needed him, that my success was impossible without his guidance. How sad, I thought, to be so threatened by someone else's accomplishments. I blocked the new number and turned my attention to the contract that had just arrived in my inbox, ready to embark on the next phase of my independent life. The next 6 months flew by in a whirlwind of activity. My work at Greenwich consumed most of my time, but the results were immediate and impressive. Students were more engaged, teacher morale improved, and preliminary test scores showed a marked uptick. Word spread quickly in the private school circuit. By month 3, I had inquiries from 2 other prestigious academies. By month 5, I was turning down work, unable to accommodate the demand. It was during this period of intense growth that I realized I needed help. Not just administrative support, but additional educational consultants who shared my vision. I found myself building a team, expanding my small office, creating something larger than myself. West Educational Consulting was no longer just me at a desk in a converted closet. It was becoming a legitimate business with multiple clients and a growing reputation for excellence. Through it all, Derek continued his campaign of undermining texts and occasional phone calls from blocked numbers. But as my success grew, his messages became more desperate, more obviously rooted in his own insecurity. Those schools are just hiring you because of your father's connections, he claimed in one particularly bitter voicemail. You've always been good at getting lucky breaks, read another text. But luck runs out eventually. I deleted them all without response, too busy building my future to waste energy on his attempts to drag me into the past. 6 months to the day after my first meeting with Thornhill, I sat in his office for our final contract review. Greenwich had been so pleased with the results that they wanted to extend our partnership for another year, with an expanded scope and a significantly increased budget. Your work has exceeded all our expectations, Ms. Westwood, Thornhill said, sliding the new contract across his desk. The board is unanimously impressed, even Mr. Reed, though he's reluctant to admit it. I smiled, signing my name with a flourish. I'm glad to hear that. And I'm excited to continue our partnership. I understand your business has grown considerably since we first met, Thornhill commented. Bradford mentioned seeing your name in the Business Journal's Rising Entrepreneurs feature. It's been a busy 6 months, I acknowledged. We're now working with 5 schools across 3 states, with more contracts pending. Thornhill leaned back in his chair, studying me with obvious approval. Quite a leap from the somewhat nervous consultant I met last fall. I laughed, recognizing the truth in his observation. I've learned a lot since then. Well, we're fortunate to have secured your services before you became too in demand to fit us into your schedule. As we wrapped up our meeting and I prepared to leave, Thornhill's assistant appeared at the door. Mr. Thornhill, Alexander Reed is here. He says it's urgent. Thornhill frowned. Tell him I'm in a meeting. I did, sir, but he's quite insistent. Before Thornhill could respond, Reed pushed past the assistant, his normally polished appearance slightly disheveled. Richard, we need to talk about, he stopped short when he saw me. Ms. Westwood. I didn't realize you were here. Mr. Reed, I greeted him calmly. I was just finishing up. Mr. Thornhill and I have been discussing the extension of my contract with Greenwich. Reed's jaw tightened. Is that so? Despite the concerns I raised? Thornhill cleared his throat. Alexander, the board vote was unanimous. Your concerns were thoroughly addressed. I gathered my things, unwilling to be drawn into whatever tension existed between the 2 men. If you'll excuse me, gentlemen, I have another appointment. As I reached the door, Reed called after me. Ms. Westwood, I spoke with Derek recently. He seemed quite surprised by your sudden success. I turned, meeting his gaze steadily. I'm sure he was. Change is always difficult to accept, especially when it challenges one's preconceptions. Reed's eyes narrowed. Indeed. Though sometimes success built too quickly can be just as quickly lost. The threat in his words was barely veiled, but I refused to be intimidated. In my experience, Mr. Reed, success built on genuine value and integrity tends to endure, regardless of who might wish otherwise. With that, I left, my steps light as I walked across the Greenwich campus. The encounter with Reed had left me oddly energized rather than anxious. 6 months ago, his implied threats would have kept me awake at night. Now they seemed like the desperate tactics of a man who realized he had backed the wrong horse. My phone buzzed as I reached my car. A text from Caroline. Check your email. Now. Curious, I opened my email to find a message from Caroline with a link to an article in the Business Journal's online edition. The headline made my breath catch. Ashford Development in Crisis, Reed pulls funding, stocks plummet. I clicked the link, scanning the article quickly. Alexander Reed had abruptly withdrawn his backing from Ashford Development, Derek's company, citing irreconcilable differences in business philosophy. The company's stock had immediately dropped by 30%, and analysts were predicting potential bankruptcy if Derek couldn't secure new investors quickly. Another text from Caroline appeared. "Did you know about this? Dad's been trying to reach you." I checked my call log and saw 3 missed calls from my father. Before I could call him back, my phone rang with an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Hello? This is your fault." Derek's voice was ragged with anger. "Reed pulled out because of you. Derek. You couldn't stand that I was finally building something of my own, could you? You had to use your father's influence to destroy me. After everything I did for you." I pulled the phone away from my ear, his vicious accusations striking me like physical blows. When I spoke again, my voice was calm but firm. "I had nothing to do with Reed's decision, Derek. But I'm not surprised he's distancing himself from someone who resorts to sabotage and intimidation when they feel threatened." "You bitch," he spat. "You have no idea what you've done. I'm ruined. Ruined. Goodbye, Derek," I said quietly, ending the call and blocking the number. I sat in my car for several minutes, processing what had just happened. Derek was facing the possible collapse of his business, and he had immediately blamed me. It was the same pattern that had defined our marriage. His failures were always someone else's fault, particularly mine. But I felt no satisfaction in his downfall. Only a profound sense of relief that I had escaped before he could drag me down with him. I called my father, who answered immediately. "Did you hear about Derek's company?" he asked without preamble. "Just now. Caroline sent me the article." I hesitated. "Dad, did you have anything to do with Reed pulling his funding?" "Me?" Dad sounded genuinely surprised. "No. Reed makes his own decisions. Though from what I hear, he was less than impressed with Derek's management style. Derek thinks I orchestrated it somehow. He just called to blame me." Dad's snort of derision was clear even through the phone. Classic Derek. Always looking for someone else to blame. The truth is, he's been making reckless decisions for months. Reed probably got tired of throwing good money after bad. Still, the timing is coincidental. Sometimes karma works on its own schedule, Camille. Dad's voice softened. "How are you feeling about all this?" I thought about it for a moment. Relieved, mostly. Derek has been sending threatening texts and calls since the divorce. Maybe now that he has real problems to deal with, he'll finally leave me alone. "Let's hope so," Dad agreed. "Though if he continues to harass you, don't hesitate to get a restraining order." After we hung up, I sat in my car a while longer, reflecting on the bizarre turn of events. 6 months ago, I had been terrified of starting over, convinced by years of Derek's gaslighting that I would fail without him. Now, I was running a successful business while he faced potential bankruptcy. The irony wasn't lost on me. When I finally started the car and pulled away from Greenwich Prep, I found myself humming a tune I couldn't immediately place. It took me several minutes to recognize it as New York, New York, specifically the line about making it there and making it anywhere. I laughed out loud, alone in my car, feeling truly free for the first time in years. 1 year after finalizing my divorce from Derek, I stood at the window of my new office, gazing out at the city skyline. The space was beautiful, open, bright, with enough room for my team of 12 educational consultants and supporting staff. A far cry from the converted closet where I'd started my business just 14 months ago. West Educational Consulting now worked with 17 schools across 7 states. Our curriculum revitalization approach had been featured in Education Weekly, and I'd been asked to speak at 3 conferences in the coming year. My phone buzzed with a text from Caroline. "Have you seen the Business Times?" I hadn't, but a quick search revealed the headline: Ashford Development Files for Bankruptcy Protection. Former CEO Derek Westwood steps down. I felt a strange emptiness reading about Derek's professional collapse, not satisfaction, not vindication, just a quiet acknowledgement that his downfall had been entirely of his own making. My assistant knocked gently, then entered with a coffee. "Your father's on line 1, she said. "And the quarterly revenue reports are ready for review." I thanked her and picked up the phone, already scanning the report she'd left. The numbers were undeniable. West Educational Consulting had generated 5 times Derek's highest annual income, and we were still growing. "Camille," Dad's voice was unusually gentle. "I thought you should hear it from me. Derek's selling the Colonial." I glanced at the framed photo on my desk, not of my old home with Derek, but of my new team at our strategic retreat last month. "I hope whoever buys it appreciates those cathedral ceilings," I replied. Dad chuckled. "You've come a long way from that scared woman who called me a year ago." I watched my staff through the glass walls of my office, dedicated professionals who believed in our mission to revolutionize education. "We both know I was never really that woman," I said softly. "Derek just made me believe I was." After hanging up, I turned back to the window, embracing the view of possibilities stretching before me, possibilities I'd created entirely on my own.